Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the weather radar on his phone. The storm was getting worse, and he still had 3 more house calls to make before he could head home to his daughter, Emma. Being the only veterinarian within 50 miles of their small Montana town meant long days, especially when ranchers needed help with sick animals. The rain hammered against his truck's windshield as he drove down the winding mountain road toward the Henderson Ranch. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the dense forest on both sides. Marcus had driven this route hundreds of times, but tonight felt different. The storm had an unusual energy to it, almost electric in a way that made his skin crawl. Emma would be worried. At 8 years old, she was smart enough to know when storms were dangerous. Mrs. Y. Patterson from next door was watching her, but Emma always felt safer when her dad was home. Ever since her mother died 2 years ago, the little girl had become his whole world. Every decision Marcus made revolved around making sure Emma was happy and safe. A flash of blue light streaked across the sky, different from the lightning. Marcus slowed his truck, squinting through the windshield. The light wasn't natural. It moved in a controlled pattern, like a falling aircraft. Then he heard it. A deep, rumbling crash that shook the ground and sent birds flying from the trees. Something had crashed in the forest, maybe half a mile from the road. Marcus pulled over and grabbed his emergency kit from the back of his truck. As a veterinarian, he was used to helping injured animals, but if someone was hurt in a plane crash, he couldn't just drive away. He had basic medical training from his time in the Army Reserve, enough to stabilize someone until real help arrived. The rain soaked through his jacket within minutes as he pushed through the thick underbrush. Tree branches caught on his clothes and scratched his face, but he kept moving toward where he'd seen the crash. The smell of burned metal and something else, something sharp and chemical, filled the air. When he reached the crash site, Marcus stopped in shock. The object buried in the dirt wasn't an airplane. It looked like nothing he'd ever seen before. Smooth, curved metal that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue energy, and steam rose from sections that had been damaged in the impact. This was a spacecraft. A real, actual spacecraft. Marcus stood there for a moment, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. Then he heard a sound that snapped him back to action, a weak moan coming from inside the wreckage. Someone was alive in there. He circled the craft, looking for a way inside. One section had been torn open by the crash, revealing a dark interior. Marcus pulled out his flashlight and carefully climbed through the opening, calling out as he went. "Hello? Can you hear me? I'm here to help." The inside of the craft was like nothing from Earth. Smooth surfaces glowed with soft lights, and symbols that looked like writing covered various panels. But Marcus didn't have time to study the alien technology. In the back section of the craft, he found her. She was definitely not human. The being was tall, maybe 6.5 feet. With pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water. Her hair was white as snow and fell past her shoulders. She wore what looked like armor made from the same material as the ship, but it was cracked and damaged. Dark blue blood seeped from several wounds on her arms and side. Most striking were her eyes. They were silver, like polished metal, and when they focused on Marcus, he felt a chill run down his spine. Even injured and trapped, there was something regal about her, something that demanded respect. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a language Marcus didn't understand. Her voice was melodic, almost musical, but filled with pain. When she tried to move, she gasped and fell back against the wall of the craft. "Easy, easy," Marcus said in his calmest voice, the same tone he used with frightened animals. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm a doctor. Well, a veterinarian, but I know how to treat injuries." The alien woman stared at him with those unsettling silver eyes. She seemed to be studying him, trying to figure out if he was a threat. Marcus moved slowly, keeping his hands visible as he opened his emergency kit. "I know you can't understand me, but I need to look at your injuries," he said. "You're losing blood, and some of these wounds look serious." To his surprise, she seemed to understand his intention, if not his words. She held still as he examined the gashes on her arms. The cuts were clean, like they'd been made by flying metal from the crash. Her blood was a deep blue color and felt slightly warm to the touch. Marcus had treated plenty of unusual animals in his career, everything from exotic birds to injured wolves. He approached her injuries the same way, focusing on stopping the bleeding and preventing infection. He used antiseptic from his kit to clean the wounds, and the alien woman hissed but didn't pull away. As he worked, Marcus noticed her watching him intently. Her expression seemed surprised, as if she hadn't expected him to help her. When he started bandaging her wounds with supplies from his veterinary kit, she actually looked amazed. "There," he said when he finished treating the worst injuries. "That should hold until we can get you proper medical attention. Though I have no idea who would know how to treat an alien." The woman reached out and touched one of the bandages on her arm. Then she looked at Marcus and said something in her musical language. The tone sounded like gratitude. "We need to get you out of here," Marcus continued. "This storm isn't letting up, and I don't know if your ship might have some kind of fuel that could be dangerous." She seemed to understand his urgency. With Marcus's help, she managed to stand, though she was clearly in pain. She was taller than him and had to lean on his shoulder as they made their way out of the wrecked spacecraft. Getting through the forest in the rain while supporting an injured alien woman was one of the hardest things Marcus had ever done. She was heavy, and several times they both nearly fell on the slippery ground. But she kept moving, showing a determination that impressed him. By the time they reached his truck, both of them were soaked and exhausted. Marcus helped her into the passenger seat, where she sat staring at the interior of his vehicle with obvious curiosity. She touched the dashboard and the radio controls with careful fingers, like she was studying human technology. "Now what?" Marcus asked himself as he started the engine. He couldn't take her to the hospital. They'd probably call the government, and who knew what would happen then? But his house was small, and Emma was there with the babysitter. As if reading his thoughts, the alien woman turned to look at him. She pointed to herself and said what sounded like a name. "Zarathin." Then she pointed to him with a questioning expression. "Marcus," he said, pointing to himself. "My name is Marcus." She repeated his name carefully, her accent making it sound exotic. "Marcus." Then she said something longer in her own language, her tone serious and formal. Marcus drove slowly through the storm, his mind racing. He'd found a crashed alien, treated her injuries, and now he was taking her home to the house he shared with his 8-year-old daughter. This was either the most important moment in human history, or he was about to put Emma in terrible danger. But looking at Zarathin as she sat quietly in his passenger seat, studying everything around her with intelligent eyes, Marcus didn't sense any threat. She'd been hurt and alone, and he'd done what anyone decent would do. He'd helped her. Whatever happened next, he could live with that decision. The lights of his house appeared through the rain as they pulled into the driveway. Marcus sat in the truck for a moment, trying to figure out how to explain this to Mrs. Patterson and Emma. "How do you tell people you've brought home an alien?" Zarathin looked at the house, then back at Marcus. She seemed to understand his hesitation. She placed one long-fingered hand on his arm and spoke softly in her language. Even without understanding the words, Marcus could hear the gratitude in her voice. Whatever came next, there was no going back now. Marcus Chen, single father and small-town veterinarian, had just become the first human to make peaceful contact with an alien species. And somehow, that felt like exactly what was supposed to happen. He turned off the engine and looked at Zarathin. "Ready to meet my daughter?" he asked, even though he knew she couldn't understand. But when she smiled, the first time he'd seen her smile, Marcus got the feeling that maybe she understood more than he thought. Marcus stood on his front porch, rain dripping from his jacket as he tried to figure out how to explain the situation to Mrs. Patterson. Through the window, he could see the elderly woman reading in his living room while Emma worked on a puzzle at the coffee table. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. In about 30 seconds, that was going to change forever. Zarathin waited beside him, leaning against the porch railing for support. Even injured and exhausted, she carried herself with a dignity that made Marcus think of royalty. The way she observed everything around her, his house, his truck, even the way the rain fell, suggested an intelligence that went far beyond anything he'd expected from first contact with an alien species. "Okay," Marcus said quietly. "Let me go in first and try to prepare them. Can you wait here for just a minute?" Zarathin tilted her head, obviously not understanding his words, but seeming to grasp his meaning. She nodded and remained by the door as Marcus went inside. Mrs. Patterson looked up from her book with a relieved smile. "Marcus, I was starting to worry with this storm. Emma's been asking for you every 10 minutes. "Daddy!" Emma jumped up from her puzzle and ran to hug him. At 8 years old, she was small for her age, but made up for it with boundless energy and curiosity. Her dark hair was pulled back in the ponytail she preferred, and her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, sparkled with excitement. "Mrs. Patterson let me stay up late because of the thunder. Did you see any animals that got scared by the storm?" Marcus hugged his daughter tight, trying to find words for what he was about to tell them. "Emma, Mrs. Patterson, I need you both to listen very carefully. Something unusual happened tonight, and I need you to promise me you'll stay calm." Mrs. Patterson's smile faded. "What's wrong, dear? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Marcus said. "But I found someone who was hurt, and I brought her here. She's not like anyone you've ever met before." Emma's eyes widened. "Is she from another country? Like on the geography shows we watch?" Marcus knelt down to Emma's level. "Something like that, sweetheart. She's from very, very far away, and she looks different from us. But she's hurt and needs help, and we're going to help her, okay?" Before either Emma or Mrs. Patterson could respond, a soft knock came from the front door. Marcus looked back at them. "Remember, stay calm. She's friendly." He opened the door, and Zarathin stepped inside, ducking slightly to fit through the doorway. Water dripped from her damaged armor, and her pale blue skin seemed to glow in the warm light of the living room. Her silver eyes took in everything at once: the furniture, the family photos, the half-finished puzzle on the table. Mrs. Patterson dropped her book and stared, her mouth falling open. But Emma's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of fear or confusion, her face lit up with pure wonder. "Oh my gosh," Emma whispered. "You're beautiful." Zarathin's attention immediately focused on the little girl. For a moment, the two simply looked at each other, the alien Empress and the human child. Then Zarathin smiled, and when she spoke, her voice was gentler than before. She said something in her musical language, and although no one understood the words, the tone was clearly kind. She moved slowly toward Emma, favoring her injured side, and knelt down to the girl's level. Emma looked up at her father. "Can I talk to her, Daddy?" "I don't think she speaks English, sweetheart, but you can try." Emma stepped forward with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. "Hi," she said clearly. "I'm Emma. Are you really from outer space?" Zarathin tilted her head, studying Emma's face. Then she pointed to herself and repeated the name she'd told Marcus earlier. Zarathin. Her pronunciation was clearer this time, and Emma tried to copy it. "Zarathin?" "Zarathin," the alien woman corrected gently, and Emma giggled. "Zarathin, That's pretty. I'm Emma. She pointed to herself, then to her father. That's my daddy, Marcus. And that's Mrs. Patterson. She's my babysitter. Mrs. Patterson had recovered enough to speak, though she still looked stunned. Marcus, what exactly is going on here? Before Marcus could answer, Zarathin did something unexpected. She reached into a hidden compartment in her armor and pulled out a small, crystal-like device. When she touched it, the crystal began to glow, and suddenly she spoke in perfect English. I apologize for the confusion, she said, her voice carrying that same musical quality but now in words they could understand. This translation device needed time to analyze your language patterns. My name is Zarathin, and I am grateful beyond words for Marcus's assistance. Emma clapped her hands in delight. You can talk! How did you learn English so fast? Zarathin smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. My people have technology that allows us to learn new languages quickly. It is a necessity when you travel between different worlds. Different worlds? Mrs. Patterson sank into her chair. You mean you really are from another planet? I am, Zarathin confirmed, and I owe my life to your friend Marcus. When my ship crashed in the storm, I thought I would die alone. Instead, he found me and treated my injuries with a skill and compassion that surprised me greatly. Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise. I just did what anyone would do. You were hurt. Zarathin's silver eyes focused on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. No, Marcus Chen, what you did was remarkable. In my experience, most species are afraid of what they don't understand. They react with violence or flee in terror. You saw a stranger, an alien stranger, and your first thought was to help. That speaks to something exceptional in your character. Emma tugged on Zarathin's armor, drawing the alien woman's attention back to her. Are you a princess? You look like a princess from my storybooks. Something flickered across Zarathin's expression. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. What makes you think that, little one? You stand really straight, like you're important. And you have pretty white hair like Queen Elsa, and your eyes are like silver. In my dreams, I always wanted to meet a real princess. Marcus noticed how Zarathin's expression changed when Emma mentioned dreams. The alien woman knelt down again, bringing herself to Emma's eye level. Tell me about your dreams, Emma, she said softly. Emma's face lit up with excitement. I have the best dreams. I dream about flying through space and seeing all the different planets and stars, and I dream about meeting people from other worlds who are kind and magical. Daddy says they're just dreams, but they feel so real. Zarathin glanced at Marcus, then back at Emma. Your father is wise to encourage your dreams. Tell me in these dreams, what do you want most of all? Emma thought for a moment, her face serious. I want to help people like my daddy does, but not just people here on Earth. I want to help everyone, everywhere. I want to learn about all the different worlds and make friends with everyone so nobody has to be scared or alone. The look that crossed Zarathin's face was profound. She stared at Emma for a long moment, and Marcus could see something like amazement in her silver eyes. That is a beautiful dream, Emma, she said quietly. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. Not to interrupt, but Zarathin, dear, you're injured. Let me help Marcus get you cleaned up and properly bandaged. As they moved to the kitchen, Marcus noticed how carefully Zarathin observed everything. She studied the photographs on the walls, pictures of Emma, of Marcus and his late wife Sarah, of family gatherings and birthday parties. When they passed Emma's artwork hanging on the refrigerator, she stopped completely. The drawing was typical 8-year-old work, but the subject was unusual. Emma had drawn herself standing on what looked like a spaceship, surrounded by figures that were clearly meant to be aliens. They had different colored skin and strange features, but they were all holding hands in a circle. At the top of the paper, in Emma's careful handwriting, were the words, "My dream friends." She draws pictures like this often, Marcus explained, noticing Zarathin's interest. She's always been fascinated by space and the idea that there might be life on other planets. Her teachers say she's gifted. Her imagination is incredible. Zarathin touched the drawing gently. "This is remarkably accurate," she said quietly. "Accurate?" "The beings she's drawn, some of them look very much like species I know, species from worlds far from here." She turned to look at Marcus, her expression serious. "Marcus, there's something I must tell you, something about who I am and why I was traveling through your system." Before she could continue, Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Daddy, can Zarathin sleep in my room tonight? She can have my extra pillow, and I promise I'll be quiet so she can rest." Marcus looked at the alien woman uncertainly. "Emma, I'm not sure." "I would be honored to accept your hospitality," Zarathin interrupted. "But Emma, I should tell you something important. I am not just a traveler from another world. I am what you might call a princess, as you guessed. But more than that, I am an empress. I rule over many worlds and many different peoples." Emma's eyes went wide. "A real empress? Like in the fairy tales?" "Something like that. And Emma, your dreams, they're more special than you know." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" Zarathin looked between him and Emma, seeming to weigh her words carefully. "Some beings are born with a gift, the ability to see across great distances, to sense things that others cannot. Your daughter has this gift, her dreams of other worlds, of different species working together. These are not just imagination. She's seeing real places, real possibilities." "That's impossible," Marcus said. But even as he spoke, he remembered all the times Emma had described things in her dreams that seemed too detailed, too consistent to be purely imaginary. "Nothing is impossible," Zarathin said gently. "And Emma, your dream of helping everyone, of bringing different worlds together in peace, that dream may be more important than you realize." Emma looked between her father and the Empress, sensing the weight of what was being said, even if she didn't fully understand it. "Does that mean my dreams could come true?" Zarathin smiled, and for the first time since Marcus had found her, she looked truly happy. "Little one, I believe your dreams are going to change everything." Marcus woke to the sound of voices in his living room. Pale morning light filtered through his bedroom window, and for a moment he wondered if the previous night had been some kind of elaborate dream. Then he heard Emma's laughter mixing with a musical voice speaking in perfect English, and reality came flooding back. He'd given his bed to an injured alien empress while he slept on the couch. Mrs. Patterson had gone home around midnight, sworn to secrecy and still looking shell-shocked. And now his 8-year-old daughter was apparently having breakfast with royalty from another world. When Marcus entered the kitchen, he found Emma and Zarathin sitting at his small table, sharing a bowl of cereal, while Emma chattered excitedly. The alien woman looked much better after a night's rest. Her color was stronger, and she moved without the painful stiffness from the night before. "Daddy!" Emma jumped up to hug him. "Zarathin told me about her spaceship. It has gardens inside where they grow food and rooms that can change shape, and it can travel faster than light." "Good morning," Zarathin said, rising gracefully from her chair. "I hope you slept well. I want to thank you again for your hospitality." Marcus poured himself coffee, still struggling to accept that he was having a normal conversation with an alien. "How are your injuries this morning?" "Much improved, thanks to your treatment." "You have genuine healing skills, Marcus. Even with our advanced medical technology, I'm not sure our physicians could have done better under the circumstances." Emma climbed back onto her chair. "Zarathin, tell Daddy about the other planets. Tell him about the one with the purple trees." But before Zarathin could respond, a low humming sound filled the air. It was barely audible at first, then grew louder and more ominous. Zarathin's expression immediately changed to one of alarm. "They found me," she said, rising quickly and moving to the window. "Who found you?" Marcus asked. But Zarathin was already speaking rapidly in her own language to the translation device. Within seconds, the crystal began projecting a holographic display showing 3 dark angular ships approaching through the morning sky. "Those are Dominion vessels," Zarathin explained, her voice tight with worry. "They're the reason I crashed here last night. I wasn't just traveling through your system, I was fleeing from them." Emma pressed against the window, staring up at the approaching ships. "They look scary. Are they bad guys?" "Very bad," Zarathin confirmed. "The Dominion believes that all worlds should be ruled by force. They've been conquering planets across our galaxy, enslaving entire civilizations. I've been leading an alliance of free worlds against them, and they've been hunting me for months." Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. "Are we in danger? Is Emma in danger?" "I will not let them harm you or your daughter," Zarathin said firmly. "This is my fault. I brought this threat to your world." The humming grew louder, and through the window they could see the alien ships slowing as they approached the house. They were sleek and predatory-looking, like metal sharks cutting through the sky. Emma suddenly grabbed Zarathin's hand. "In my dream last night, I saw ships like these, but they didn't find what they were looking for." Zarathin knelt down to Emma's level. "What else did you see in your dream, little one?" "I saw you, but you looked different. You were wearing a crown made of stars, and you were standing in front of lots of different aliens. They were all looking at you like you were going to save them." Emma's eyes were bright with the memory. "And I saw Daddy. He was helping too, but not with medicine. He was helping in a different way." The ships had stopped directly overhead now, casting shadows across the house. Marcus could hear mechanical sounds, landing gear extending, engines powering down. "Zarathin," Marcus said urgently, "what do they want?" "They want me dead," she replied simply. "As long as I live, I represent hope for the free worlds. But more than that," she looked at Emma with an expression Marcus couldn't read. "They want her." "Emma? What do you mean they want Emma?" Zarathin took a deep breath. "Beings like your daughter, those who can see across space and time, who can sense the connections between all living things, are incredibly rare. The Dominion searches for them throughout the galaxy. They use their gifts to locate and conquer new worlds." Marcus stepped protectively in front of Emma. "Over my dead body." "That might not be necessary," Zarathin said thoughtfully. "Emma, in your dreams, do you ever see things that haven't happened yet? Things that might happen?" Emma nodded. "Sometimes. But Daddy says they're just make-believe." "They're not make-believe. Show me what you saw about today." Emma closed her eyes and spoke in a dreamy voice that made Marcus's skin crawl. "I see the bad ships landing. I see the scary aliens coming out. They have gray skin and red eyes. But I also see—" "Wait." Her eyes snapped open. "Zarathin, you have other friends coming, don't you? Ships with blue lights?" Zarathin's eyes widened. "The Alliance fleet? But they don't know where I am." "They will," Emma said with the confidence of a child, "because I'm going to call them." Before anyone could stop her, Emma walked over to Zarathin's translation device and placed her small hands on the crystal. Immediately, it began glowing brighter than before, and Emma's voice filled the room, but she wasn't speaking English. She was speaking the same musical language Zarathin used. The alien Empress stared in shock. How is she doing that? Emma opened her eyes but kept her hands on the device. When she spoke, it was in English again, but her voice had an otherworldly quality. "I can feel them out there. Your friends. They've been looking for you. I'm telling them where you are." Heavy footsteps approached the house, and Marcus heard the unmistakable sound of energy weapons powering up. The Dominion soldiers were here. "Emma, get away from that thing," Marcus said, but his daughter shook her head. "I have to finish calling them. They're almost here, but I need to guide them in." The front door exploded inward, and 3 figures in black armor stepped through the smoking entrance. They were humanoid but clearly alien, taller than humans, with gray skin and burning red eyes behind dark visors. The weapons they carried hummed with deadly energy. The lead soldier spoke in a harsh, guttural language, but Zarathin's device translated automatically. "Empress Zarathin, you will surrender yourself and the human child. Resistance will result in the elimination of all organic life in this structure." Zarathin stepped forward, placing herself between the soldiers and Marcus's family. "I am here, as you can see, but the child is under my protection." "The child comes with us," the soldier replied coldly. "The Dominion has use for her abilities." "Like hell," Marcus said, stepping up beside Zarathin. He was just a small-town veterinarian facing alien soldiers with energy weapons, but he was also a father, and that made him more dangerous than they could possibly understand. The soldier turned his weapon toward Marcus. "Human, you will stand aside or be eliminated." That's when Emma finished her call. The sky suddenly filled with ships bearing blue lights, dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace with the precision of a military operation. They were sleek and beautiful, designed more like works of art than weapons of war. But the energy signatures they gave off made the Dominion ships look like toys. The lead soldier's head snapped toward the window. "Impossible. How did they find this location?" Emma looked up from the crystal device, her eyes still glowing faintly. "I told them where to come, and I told them to hurry." Zarathin laughed. The first time Marcus had heard her truly joyful. "The Alliance fleet. Emma, you've just accomplished something our best military strategists couldn't do. You've brought together ships from a dozen different worlds in perfect coordination." Through the windows, they could see sleek fighters engaging the Dominion vessels while larger ships moved into position around the house. The battle was brief and decisive. The Dominion ships, outnumbered and caught by surprise, were quickly disabled or driven off. The soldier facing them received some kind of communication through his armor and cursed in his alien language. "This is not over, Empress. The Dominion will find you again." "Maybe," Zarathin said calmly, "but they'll have to deal with something they've never faced before." "Which is?" Zarathin put her hand on Emma's shoulder. "A human child who can unite entire fleets with a thought, and a father who would fight a galactic empire to protect her. Your Dominion has conquered thousands of worlds, but you've never faced anything like the bond between a human parent and child." The soldiers retreated to their ships, which limped away into space. Minutes later, the first Alliance vessel landed in Marcus's backyard, which would never be the same again. A delegation of aliens emerged, beings of different shapes and colors, but all carrying themselves with the dignity of military officers. They approached the house and, upon seeing Zarathin, immediately knelt in respect. She waved them to their feet and spoke in her own language before switching back to English for Marcus and Emma's benefit. "Fleet Commander Thane, allow me to introduce Marcus Chen and his daughter Emma. Without their aid, I would have died last night, and the Alliance would have lost its leader. More importantly, Emma has just demonstrated abilities that could change the course of our war." Commander Thane, a tall being with blue-green skin and kind eyes, bowed to Marcus and Emma. "It is an honor to meet the humans who saved our Empress. Your reputation for courage and compassion precedes you." Emma looked up at her father. "Daddy, does this mean my dreams are really going to come true?" Marcus looked at his daughter, his brilliant, gifted, impossible daughter, standing among aliens from across the galaxy like she belonged there. Then he looked at Zarathin, who was watching Emma with an expression of wonder. "I think, sweetheart, your dreams are about to become much bigger than either of us imagined." Zarathin knelt down to Emma's level one more time. "Emma Chen, I would like to offer you something that no human has ever been offered before. Would you like to come with us? Not to leave your father," she added quickly, seeing Marcus's expression, "but to travel among the stars as my ambassador. You could help bring peace to worlds that have never known it, and your father could establish the first human medical outreach program to alien civilizations." Emma looked at her father with eyes full of stars. "Daddy, could we really go to space?" Marcus thought about his small veterinary practice, about the quiet life he'd planned for himself and Emma. Then he looked at the ships in his backyard, at the aliens who had traveled across the galaxy to thank him for helping their leader, at his daughter who had just called an entire fleet to Earth with nothing but her dreams and determination. "I think," he said slowly, "we're going to need a bigger house, one with landing pads." Emma threw her arms around him, laughing with pure joy, and Marcus Chen realized that sometimes the best thing a parent can do is say yes to the impossible, because when your 8-year-old daughter can unite alien fleets with her mind, maybe impossible is just another word for Tuesday. As the Alliance ships prepared to depart, carrying the Chen family toward adventures beyond imagination, Zarathin stood in the doorway of the house that had given her sanctuary. She touched the translation device one more time, sending a message across all Alliance frequencies. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy that humanity is under the protection of the Alliance. Any who would harm them must answer to Empress Zarathin and all the free worlds. And let it also be known that a small human child named Emma Chen has shown us what true strength looks like. Not the power to conquer, but the courage to help a stranger in need." The age of humanity among the stars had begun, and it started with a single father who chose compassion over fear on a stormy night in Montana.